The Holy Gospel according to Mark, the 13th chapter. As Jesus came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones and what large buildings." Then Jesus asked him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down." When he was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will this be? And what will be the sign that all these things are about to be accomplished?" Then Jesus began to say to them, "Beware that no one leads you astray. And many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place. But the end is still to come. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs." The gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. For 2,000 years, anytime anyone hears texts like this, they think, "Oh, that's today. That's now. Here it is." And it's kind of a sad state of affairs that honestly it's because these things are happening all the time. There is pain, there is hurt, there are earthquakes. Nations continue to rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Unfortunately, the world remains the same. Yet Jesus, sitting there, sees this temple, this huge temple. Anybody here went to Israel? Anyone here? Some of you who went to Israel? It was a massive temple, this massive temple with these stones that were several feet high, several feet wide, and went 15 feet. And how they had created this massive temple called the Second Temple. When Jesus sees this symbol of strength and power, sees the symbol of everything that their entire nation, in fact, their entire religion is built upon, and says, "Not one stone. Not one stone." Now, unfortunately, there were some stones left upon each other. I hate to say it. The Western Wall, if you've heard of the Western Wall, that's the only piece of the Temple Mount that was still up from that time of the temple. And it's interesting that Jesus says, "Do you see these things? All of these will come down." And the disciples say, "Well, when is this going to be? When is it going to be?" And Jesus then lists these things and says, "Don't let them lead you astray, because these things happen." And then he even says they're just a part of the birth pangs. It's just the beginning of the pain. It's the part of the world that needs to be born. When this gospel was written, it was right after what was called the Great Revolt. Started around 66 AD. And in 70, it was against the Roman Empire, because the Roman Empire was asking them to do things that they thought were just really anathema to who they were as people. At one point, Caligula, who was a Roman emperor at the time, demanded that he was a god and that all other gods were gone, and demanded that every temple in the Roman Empire had to put a figure of him inside every temple. And the Jewish people refused to do it. And there was a thought that the Romans were going to come, but Caligula was actually assassinated before that ever came to be. But then the persecutions on the Jewish people just kept happening. There was tons of money stolen from the temple. We heard last week about them opening the treasury and the coins dropping down. Tons of that money was stolen. The Roman emperor actually was the one, or the Roman consul in the area, was the one who selected the high priest in the temple to make sure that the high priest was padding his and the Roman consul's pocket. And so the high priests were considered just a tool of the Roman Empire. That there was just all sorts of discord and people were getting upset. And then not only that, but as it happens, when there is frustration and temptation, everybody has an idea about how to fix it. And everybody wants to fix it. And so there are actually two different groups in Judea that began to fight each other and to began to kill each other and hurt each other when their actual enemy was the Roman Empire. And it was just all of this foment of violence and pain and hurt all coming together. And so it's in this context that Mark writes, the temple, it's all going to be torn down. Now, if you know the gospel stories, you'll know that actually this was one of the accusations that they had against Jesus. They said, aren't you the one who said that they would tear down the temple and 3 days later raise it up? It was one of the accusations that actually got him killed. And why? Because the temple symbolized the very presence of God in the midst of the people. It was the center of their religion. Their identity, who they were, was this building, this gorgeous big temple there. So can you imagine what that meant to them when that temple was torn down? It wasn't just an ending of a building. It was a nationwide identity crisis. It was a whole people who had lost their sense and purpose of being because they truly believed that the temple was the presence of God in their lives. They had a little place in the back called the Holy of Holies that they believed that God rested in that place. And when that's gone, what does that mean for the people? What does that mean about who they are and where they're coming from? It was a nationwide identity crisis. Yet Jesus saw this coming. Jesus saw that actually the temple place is all coming down. And then what Jesus said is, in 3 days I would rise again. This was a foreshadowing of where the temple would actually be built, where the temple was actually going to rest. You see, from the beginning of time, from the beginning of the whole story, the people wanted a temple. They wanted a place for God. And God says, I don't want a temple. I don't want any kind of temple. Don't put me in a temple. I like tents. Keep me in a tent. Tent's fine for me. But the people said, we want a temple. So God said, so be it. And what did they do? They ended up worshiping a temple. They said, we want a king. Give us a king. Give us a king today. God's like, you don't want a king. You don't want a king. They said, we want a king. God said, so be it. This is what happens when you put up a king. That we begin to worship the leader, the building, and the leader. We're not too far off that today, are we? Right? All you got to do is pull up some carpet, and then a lot of people have opinions. Right? All you have to do is remove a dove. And people begin to say, this just isn't my church anymore. Or we say, what a great leader we have. What a great leader we have. But the truth is, God never wanted a building. God never desired this. God never said, give me a building that people can gather in for 1 hour a week. I want that. Give me good music. Thank you, sir. That will move us. Give me books that we have to pick numbers of hymns and do those things. That is what I truly desire. That has never been God's desire. From the beginning, God has desired one thing. That the law and the work of God would rest in the heart of God's people. And that the way they lived would be the temple of God. And the way they moved in the world, that would be where the church rested. See, the church doesn't need a building. The church needs us, the people of God. The people of God who come together, who see and unite behind a vision of a world restored, who see fracture and bring it back together, who see hurt and pain and bring it back into healing. A a place where people who are divided and are said that they can no longer be friends are brought together again to remind one another that they are children of God. A vision of the poor being fed, of the immigrant being welcomed, of people who are told that they are less, being told that they are a more, that they are not only the ones of which we are called to love, but are lifted higher than us. The call that we have been had is not a call to come to a building. The call has always been to love your neighbor as yourself, to love God. That is the command, not to come to church, but to love God and love your neighbor. Now, there is a place for the church, though. But the church, at its best, the best thing the church can be is a finger. A finger that points people to where God is. At our best, we're a finger whose job is to point people in the direction of where we are called to go, where the oppressed are, where the hurt are, where people are needing healing, life, and love. We are at best a finger, but the problem is it's really easy to start worshiping the finger, right? To talk about how well we point, to talk about how good this finger is. Isn't this a great finger? This is a really terrific finger. Look how well it points. Everybody just stare at my finger. Rather than to see beyond what God is calling us to be. See, God never called us to point to Abiding Hope Church. God called us to point to Jesus, who has restored us, who has reconciled us, who has torn down a temple so that we no longer need to look for God in a place, but to seek God in our lives. That is where God is calling us to do and to be. Some of you know this story, some of you may know, I gave up on church. I quit church. I was a pastor, and I quit church. I was done. I was so done. The pastors, you know how you have these like stoles? I gave away all my stoles. I was done. And it wasn't because I didn't believe in God. I still fully believed and put my faith in God. But I didn't think that I could find a place that truly wanted to go after what God wanted us to go after. And most of the places that I went, most of the churches I went to, it just felt like they were worshiping themselves, or that they were a club, or that they were a committee of some families that like to get together and be around each other. But the minute you asked them to do something in the vision and the worship and the life of God, they were like, nope, no thank you. And so I was like, well, I'm going to look for God outside the church. I'm going to look for God outside the temple. And I'm going to look for God in other places. And so I did. I went to Germany. God was there, for sure. But then at the end of that time, I got called here to Abiding Hope Church. And when I came, I was skeptical. Y'all, I was skeptical. Because, I had some church hurt. Anybody here ever have a little church hurt? Yeah. I was skeptical. But over the last 7 years, as I've been walking with you, learning your stories, seeing the people of God that you are, you've taught me to love the church again. You've taught me that there is a place. There is a place where the Spirit of God doesn't rest in a building, but rests in the people. There is a place where people are trying to do the best they can. Not that we're always successful, not that we're the best. We're not always the best finger, y'all. But we try, and we work on it. And when we fail, we get up and we do it again. That is Abiding Hope Church. Abiding Hope, never give up, never throw it in the towel. Hope, right? That is what this place is. And I'm here at Abiding Hope Church because I believe in this place. I believe in Abiding Hope. I believe that this is a place where we can actually make a difference in the world. And I've been in other places, y'all. I've been in other places. This place is beautiful and different and unique. I believe, just like the Who's in Whoville, if this place burned to the ground, we would be here the next Sunday singing in the rubble. I guarantee you. Right? Yes. That it would be a gift to be in this place. When we're talking about your commitment to Abiding Hope Church, I'm not asking you to give to this. I'm not asking you to give to fancier altar things. I'm not asking you to give. I'm asking you to give to the person next to you, to the gift of God in the church and the temple that lives in the person next to you, to the vision that they're carrying, the hurt that they're carrying that they found here, the people who've had church hurt, who have found healing here, the people who have seen and heard of a new vision and they found it here. I'm asking you to give to those people because there are more out there and we need to get them here. I believe that this place gets it. And I'm invested here. I'm invested here because we, friends, we are the church. You and me, doing as best as we can, walking this journey. When you give your Ignite commitment today, I want you to think about the people and not the place. I want you to think about the heart and not the lights. I want you to think about the gift that this place has been to you and it continues to be for others. May your faith be restored in the church as mine has. May your joy be restored as we joyfully bring our gifts forward tonight. If you'll pray with me. Lord God, you have called your servants to ventures of which we cannot see the ending, on paths as yet untrodden, through perils unknown. Give us faith to go out in good courage, not knowing where we go, but only that your hand is leading us and your love supporting us. In the name of love, whose name is Jesus. Amen.